Do you think because it's not an illegal drug, it must be fine?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yep. And even like there's periods now where you have this elitism of, you're a pharmaceutical drug addict, so it's not as bad, but it's all the same behaviours.
That's Nick Stacey. His life was torn apart by an opioid addiction, and it's taken more than a decade for him to piece himself back together. As millions of people do, Nick started taking prescription drugs to cope with the pain of a shocking sports injury, and as he endured surgery after surgery, use turned to abuse.
They put me on Stilnox, not knowing anything about it. I went with it.
Nick lost his marriage to addiction and was diagnosed with cancer soon after, all while trying to raise 2 young children and hold down a job. In the face of terrible adversity, Nick's found a way to survive, put one foot in front of the other, and make life worth living.
Welcome to Young Blood, an award-winning podcast on a mission to make the mental health of young men a top priority. My name's Callum McPherson, I'm a journalist, and this is our platform to open up and share stories of what we've been through because we're not alone. Let's do it. Trigger warning, if you find anything spoken about in today's episode distressing, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Nick, what kind of kid were you growing up?
That's a good question. I guess I grew up in a small town, so it was a bit of a case of big fish.
How small?
Small pond. Only about 1,000 people. Yeah. Overall, the town was quiet, but yeah, I guess I was quite outgoing, like played a lot of sport and was okay at it. Good enough to people think you're cool. That's sort of how it works in the country.
Yep.
Did when I was growing up anyway.
So that was your identity early on?
100%, yeah. Played, multiple sports and...
Not much else to do, right?
No, if you didn't play sport, people didn't sort of know about you. That's just how the town runs.
And you had some natural ability?
Yeah, had a little bit, yeah. I was particularly, tennis was my best sport. Like I went on to coach when I came to Adelaide, and my biggest strength playing footy was my mouth.
Yeah.
I was pretty good on the lip. Not quite an Eddie Betts goal sneak, but got profiled as that sort of small mid forward my whole career. So.
Few highlights?
Well, I like to tell people about him, but there's not that many.
Yeah, no. Didn't have video back in those days?
No. I think, unfortunately, my brother was 2 years older. He took the highlights package. He was a bit taller and could jump higher.
Yeah, right, yeah. Okay. He got all the attention.
And all the nice stuff, yeah. So I was sort of Chris's brother, yeah.
You've moved out of that shadow since then?
Yes, yeah, definitely have, yeah. He's, I grew up on a farm, and which is just interesting for someone who had no sort of interest in farming growing up. Like all I wanted to do was go to the town. Whereas my older brother was probably a bit more drawn to, farm.
So did you feel a bit trapped then?
Definitely felt out of place. Yeah. Because farms they're generational, really. So
was there an expectation that you were going to do that?
Never a forced expectation, but it's kind of, as a kid, you put that sort of pressure on yourself, like, should I be doing, carrying on the family tradition of farming, and that's goes back to 3 or 4 generations.
What did you want to do?
Growing up, I wanted to do something, sort of around sport. Like I wasn't quite sure what it was. Like the player agent thing really appealed to me. As I've got older, like well-being in the sports sort of place, and just the general population, like that's sort of something I've become quite passionate about. Yeah. But I guess growing up, just anything to do with sport. Yeah. I thought, owning a sports store would be cool, but now I look at that and go, Jesus, I'm glad I don't own a sports store. But yeah.
So how did sports factor into your identity when you were a kid and then young adult?
As I sort of found out, like that was my identity. Like even now, like 10 years post, injury, which we'll get to, I struggle to name what my identity is. So really, I was Nick Stacey. I was okay at sport, and that provided social, opportunities for me, and
didn't sort of have much time for much else or think much else about.
Not really.
Other aspects of life?
No. Like, when I got to late high school, I studied quite hard and got a good result and stuff, considering that country schools aren't exactly filled with the best or most qualified teachers.
Yeah, you were one of the smart ones?
Well, yeah, especially for guys. Like, I think we only had 5 guys in that class in year 12. So it probably wasn't too hard to stand out, but
Yeah.
did okay. So
And that meant that you went off to uni after school?
yeah, it did. Yeah, I was always planning to go to uni. Not sure if it's still around. We used to get bonus points back then. So I actually changed my mind on what course I wanted to do based on my score.
Yep.
So I had sort of sports science, human movement as number one.
But you did better than
Got
that.
bonus points.
then,
I thought, oh, geez, I better use these bonus points because that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
And went into radiography. Yeah.
What was you thinking around that? It just sounded impressive?
I think just maybe
You heard they make a lot
surety
of
of
coin?
a job and money.
Yeah.
And then once I started, it was like 4 guys and 96 girls.
And that was a bad thing?
That was a good thing about the course. That's why I lasted 8 weeks. But no, I just, they started talking about the practical side of it, and I thought, I just can't take X-rays all day every day. It's not me.
Yeah. No, I get that.
Yeah.
I did law straight out of school because I got good grades as well, and I wasn't really interested in it, but wasn't sure what to do. Actually, funnily enough, the school counsellor said, you should be a journalist, which I did end up doing. But I did law because people were like, that's a good degree that people do, I guess, good general degree. Yeah. And then actually doing it, I was like, this is just boring me shitless, the actual reality of it. But also you realise when you're there that there's all these other people who are really into it. You're like, I shouldn't be here.
Yeah, so, I found that. So people that had already pre-studied and stuff, and you're like,
So you moved to Adelaide for that, and then you dropped out.
Dropped out, yeah. Sort of tried to find a job, but that was the first time I actually admitted it, I was struggling with my mental health.
Admitted it to who? Yourself?
Admitted to mum and dad, first of all, yeah. So I was down here sort of trying to find work, like Rowan Jarman back in the day.
Yeah, I remember Rowan Jarman.
They put me through four trials and didn't get a job.
Oh, that's a bit rough.
Yeah, which is actually illegal, I think. But anyway,
yeah, it is now, for sure.
It's a bit late to go after.
I'm not going to come after Rowan Jarman. Yeah. What'd your mum and dad say?
Oh, they were just worried about me, I think back then, admitting you had depression and like this, I'm talking like lying in bed all day depression, like it wasn't, I feel a bit flat here and there, like I was really struggling, and it sort of had come off the back of, like a relationship breakdown, young love. But
as it often does,
yeah. But it was a bit more serious because the girl I was seeing she was quite unwell herself, and to the point where she hospitalised several times, and trying to support someone through that while you're, early uni or going through year 12, and it was probably made me grow up pretty quick. So
how did that impact you when you reflect on it?
It's definitely it's impacts my anxiety, and I guess it elevated everything.
Like hypervigilance?
Yeah, pretty much hypervigilant. Like my, I guess, thoughts on a relationship at that point were you do absolutely everything you can, even if it's one-way traffic. Like, if you get nothing out of the relationship and then you still keep doing it, and that's pretty much what drove me into the ground, I think.
So you got used to that and burned yourself out?
Pretty much, yeah. Like I did burn myself out, and,
Because your girlfriend at the time was suffering with eating disorder. Right?
Yeah. And that's
super hard psychologically and for a partner as well, because, very hard to understand why it's going on and what your part in that is and how you can do anything about it.
It's, I mean, all you want to do is help. But as I've learned over the years, the best help you can be to someone going through something is just support, because until they make the call that, they need help, nothing will really change. And ironically, that's down the track. The ball's in my court with that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
And so that just sort of, you got your end of your tether dealing with that, where you couldn't.
It was for my own well-being. Yeah.
But then you felt guilty about it.
Of course, I felt extremely guilty. Like, someone I loved at the time and I deeply cared about, seeing them just sort of fade away and just be so sick mentally and physically. It was hard. It was hard. And then there's, in a small town, there's comments like, I'd done something to trigger it, or I'd called her fat or she didn't look good in something, which was never the case.
Yeah. So there's perceptions as well.
Perceptions and a few comments that were thrown my way around it, which.
And then you love someone and they become someone who they weren't before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you later in life, you had your own experience of that, where you became
exactly.
that person too.
Yeah. It's probably should have picked up sooner that that it was just a role reversal.
Those patterns were repeating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were struggling, when you were that young, did you try to seek any help, or did your parents try to put you forward anywhere?
No, I booked in to see a psychiatrist down in Adelaide. Thinking back at the time, they put me on still knocks, which was interesting because I was struggling to sleep a little bit, and just another antidepressant. But nowadays, still knocks is just a no-go. Really.
Why is that?
Oh, it can be quite highly addictive.
Right.
Yeah, that was kind of their first port of call, which is slightly unusual, but not knowing anything about it, I went with it. And
yeah, did that help?
It helped put you to sleep, but there was some odd experiences. Like I got up and cleaned the house in the middle of the night,
right,
not knowing I'd done that. And then you do some research, and people have gotten in cars and driven around, and so I stopped it pretty quick.
Yeah, okay. So cleaning the house is not the worst thing that could have happened.
No, it's probably one of the rare times I did it back then. But I guess looking back, it's definitely medication. I don't want to touch.
But that was straight away. They said just take this, and they didn't really have a conversation with you.
Pretty much. It said I was really struggling sleeping due to the anxiety, and I couldn't get to sleep. And then when I did get to sleep, I didn't want to sort of wake up. So that was their option, was to give me a sleeping tablet, which
and not go further into how you were feeling and what you'd been through.
No. Yeah. And I saw the psychiatrist multiple times and never really dug that deep. But I guess looking back now, I was only willing to give away certain bits of what had gone on in my life. And that was something that not until 2 years ago, really, everything came out that, had happened to me when I was a lot younger, which, I think I was year 6 at the time. Something happened, and, holding on to that for 20 odd years is heavy when you think about it. Like, just the event itself and the flashbacks you get with it, and, really it takes away your feeling of, like, feeling safe just anywhere. Because, having stuff happen in a place where you think you should be the safest is, it's pretty hard to handle, and something I'm still working through now, and, it's 22 years ago sort of thing. So,
so it becomes very clear to you how that sexual abuse filters into the rest of your life.
Yeah, like, I mean, any traumatic event that happens, particularly when you're younger, definitely shapes, my opinion, it shapes your mental health and what happens. And
but you don't know it at the time.
Don't know at the time, no. But laid the foundation for every other traumatic event that happened on top. It was just became heavier and heavier. Whereas if I just had that alone to deal with, that was probably heavy enough.
Yeah, and may have had something to do with why you're predisposed to addiction as well when it came to that point. And
well, as I've learned, like, addiction is I think it's like 98% trauma based.
The symptom.
It's a symptom of, people seek an escape from their life for whatever reason, and usually it's trauma. And, like I've heard some horrific stories of things that happen to, people when they're young, and not just when they're young, but, just growing up in their teenage years, and then even into adulthood. Like, life doesn't stop.
And the self-protective factor of the human mind's incredible as well, how it can oppress and suppress things, and then they come out later, and you might have even not realised or forgotten that happened to a degree, or not allowed yourself to remember it and then have it reappear. Yeah,
it's very common, from what I've been told and what I've read, that, childhood sexual abuse, it's very common that it comes out about 35 to 45 in males. And your ability to suppress it gets to the point where I was questioning myself whether it actually happened. I buried it that deep. When eventually, words came out of my mouth to my therapist, it was like, it just all hit me at once.
Because it's just too much to cope with.
Too much to cope with. And like at the time, my therapist was very sort of spiritual and about energy and your flow in your body and stuff. And as soon as I told her, I literally had blood pour out my nose. Like it was one of these experiences that you think you see in a movie or something. And it was just, to me, it was a release of just this energy, like this bad energy.
It was that intense.
Yeah, that intense.
Yeah.
And just me admitting it, that was a physical response to it, which, it was pretty full on, that whole hour-long session I had with her, but it felt like I'd come out of a boxing ring when I got out.
Was it a good thing?
Yeah, it had to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had to happen, because otherwise I think I would continue to seek escape from those feelings.
Yeah.
Which is, whether it's drinking or using drugs, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you can't move forward if you've got that same source that's causing it.
Yeah.
Got to face it.
Yeah.
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 Thanks for sharing that, mate. I know that's so tough.
It's tough to talk about, but I think it's important that I've seen people in the news and stuff, and I just admire the bravery, like coming out. Like it's not easy, but it's something I've had to do to move on with my life, because
that's right. You take the control back then when you're finally ready to be able to share that.
Yeah, finally realise you weren't at fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most important thing.
No, I admire you for doing it, mate.
Mm.
Tell us about the footy injury in 2011.
Yeah, so my AFL career was, I was thinking about nominating for the draft that year. I was only 26, but played country footy. Used to drive back every week from the city, and round one, 2011, my brother was actually the player coach that year. I was meant to go to a wedding on the day it happened, but had a trial game the week before and kicked a few, and got a bit excited, and I thought I'll play footy and then I'll just go to the wedding after. And literally it would have been 2 minutes into the match, got tackled, and just a freak injury, a dislocation fracture of my hip, which when it happened, it went off like a gun. Like people said they could hear it on the other side of the oval and stuff. And what ensued after that was 3 hours of just pain like I've never felt like.
And they couldn't even get you to the hospital?
No. So it happened in Christabrook, which is, the hospital's not that far, but the issue was there's no ambulance. So they rang an ambulance, which actually got called out to a car accident from Port Peril, which was more urgent at the time, which I sort of understood. I wasn't angry about, but
you're just lying there in agony the whole time.
They didn't communicate that they weren't coming.
Right.
So eventually I had 4 grown men put me in the back of a high ace and sort of sit in the back trying to hold it still. And anyone who's ever dislocated something, all you want to do is just like be in a spot where
you're stable.
It doesn't hurt.
You're not moving around. Yeah. You're bumping around a fair bit.
It's a dirt road. Driving out of the oval, and I felt every bump. And when we got to the hospital, all I wanted to do, I was just put it back in. Just like do whatever you can do, put it back in. And they said, "Oh well, we'll do it straight away, like while you're awake." And I'm like, "What do you have to do?" And they told me. And it's like 2 doctors, one end and one the other end. Like so, one would pull
like
my
pulling
leg, and they'd go, I said, "No way, you're knocking me out!" Like, it makes me cringe even now thinking about it. And I think my dad stayed in the room for it, which
so they did knock you out, and then they did it.
Out and did it. But when I woke up, I had no pain. But country hospitals that don't have the equipment to perform scans like we do.
So there was some serious damage, though.
There was some serious damage, yeah. So got brought down by ambulance on the Monday and had a scan done, and the person who performed the scan, she thought I'd been in a car crash. Like she said, like was looking for scratches on me, and said, "No, I've just got tackled playing footy," and they just couldn't believe it was like a footy accident. So it was just this freak accident which changed my life. Like
So you legitimately thinking you might have a shot at playing professionally before that happened?
No, not professionally. In my dreams, I think.
Okay, but it was what you looked forward to doing, and exactly, it was like what you were known for. And
I said to, I used to drive, it was a 6-hour round trip every week.
Yeah,
to drive back home and play because I love playing footy for my, home club, and anyone that plays footy in the country. Like,
But you weren't even supposed to play that day.
yeah, I should have gone to the wedding. Should have gone to the wedding.
Jeez.
But,
and so what did they say to you about your injury? And
straight away before they even done the surgery, the surgeon just came and said, you won't play sport again. Like, you won't be the same. We'll do our best. They said, we'll do our best to put it back together, which they did at reconstruction initially. But
how'd that hit you?
that was the first time I'd actually cried. Like, I didn't cry from the pain. But as soon as they told me that, that's what broke me.
Did you believe it?
I knew it was bad. I'd had enough injuries growing up. And, I think the fact there was like 7 fractures or cracks or whatever, like it wasn't a simple
Clean break.
surgery. Yeah. Because I've seen people dislocate hips in even at the professional level. I think Sam Day from Gold Coast did it a few years ago, just running. But he came back because there was no fracture. But yeah, the fact that there was so many fractures and it's just my ability to move is taken away from me. So, things like tennis where there's lots of lateral movement, footy, which you're all over the place, that was gone.
And so you must have been thinking, who am I then?
Yeah. I'd had quite a few injuries growing up, but never this severe. And mum and dad's, their advice when anything happened was, there's people worse off. It's true to a degree, but the issue with that approach is you don't, I guess, recognise how you're feeling and what you're feeling about the whole event. Like,
you don't validate it.
There's no validation, and it's almost like there's people worse off, so
get over it.
Yeah. And that's...
Which you can see what they're trying to do
Exactly.
and why you're saying that. And that works more for some people than others. I mean, it is true. There's always someone worse off,
100%.
But it's all relative. You're going through it. You're feeling those same feelings that anyone else would feel.
Yeah.
And acknowledging you've just got a terrible injury and it's taken away your identity. It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And I think it was I didn't swear at mum in a aggressive way, but I more or less just said that. I said, oh, fucking hell, mum, can't you just let me feel like shit for a little bit here?
Yeah.
And I know what they do. It's a perspective. Like that whole approach is a perspective thing, and it does play a part in, I guess, your recovery long term, like realising that, yes, this is bad, but,
probably a bit later though. You want to
not
acknowledge
later,
it first and not
when I've just been told, and I'll just try to process the whole event, really.
Yeah, and if that really is the last time you can play, then you have to go through a period of grieving pretty much for not being able to do what you love and that version of yourself dying, essentially.
Yeah, which I never did. Yeah. And only last sort of year and a bit I've done that. Yeah, which is, when you think about it, like when no one ever actually approached it like that with my therapy, like at the time. Well, I didn't really have a lot at the time, but it was only sort of recently, like my therapist said, you're allowed to grieve that part of you that you've lost. It was only then that I could actually move on from it, which sounds crazy because, if you lose someone, your grief's a bit quicker than 10 years. Yeah.
And everyone expects you to grieve that, and you expect yourself to grieve losing someone.
And it does sound a bit funny, like grieving, like you losing part of your identity, but if you go through it, anyone that goes through it can understand it. Like it's,
And from the time the injury happened until you did allow yourself to go through that, you were just forcing that down and pushing it away without even knowing that was a thing.
Yeah. So it was another trauma event, which I just kept suppressing the feelings down around it. And that is obviously when my addiction really started, because I'd never touched a painkiller, didn't know what they really were. But yeah, as soon as I woke up, they, I think, gave me more tablets than even you normally meant to, because it was a pretty severe injury. And straight away, I was in a good space. I was ringing people, and I was happy and just relaxed, which is really weird because I'd just come through this horrific event where I've been screaming in pain and just not really. You just go into survival mode when you're in that sort of space. But a couple of painkillers and I was fine. Which that's when the alarm bells should really have gone off for me.
No alarm bells going off when you're feeling that good, though.
No. That makes, even the events that happened earlier in my life, like got rid of them, didn't think about them. Yeah, just this ultimate feeling of euphoria or relaxation. Or
what did they tell you about what you were taking?
Thinking back, I can't remember one doctor until about 4 or 5 months in. I was going to a walk-in clinic, but the same walk-in clinic. And eventually a doctor said, you probably shouldn't be taking these for too long. That was the comment. But then he gave me a script. So there was no sort of explanation around what's going to happen when you stop, why they're addictive.
Did you think because it's not an illegal drug, it must be fine?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. And even like there's periods now where you have this elitism of, you're a pharmaceutical drug addict, so
yeah.
It's not as bad, but it's all the same behaviours.
Also how it's been viewed by society as well, or certainly that there's more sympathy generally for people who are prescription drug addicts.
Yeah.
And probably not when you know them personally, but just in general, someone who gets hooked on something that was given to them versus someone who's sought out a drug which has that label of being so destructive.
100% right.
But like you say, same result.
Same result, yeah. But you're right. It's there is a perception there that it's not as bad, but trust me,
pretty strong
when you get into an opioid addiction, it's legal heroin, essentially. And the behaviours that come with it are all the same behaviours that any other drug addict, alcoholic goes through. It's basically someone else takes over your body. It's like I wasn't there. Just all your morals go out the window. Like,
you conscious of that?
No, not when you're in it. No. You're conscious to a degree, but the stronger feeling is I want to take more.
Yeah, it overpowers everything.
It's such a strong, and can only talk for me, but speaking to other addicts, it's, my first thought, if I don't stop it then, even now, like if I have a thought about taking something, which is pretty rare nowadays, luckily, but if I don't nip it in the bud right then with tools I've been given, I'm in trouble. So it's...
Because that'll grow in your mind.
Yeah, it'll pretty much end up with me taking something. Yeah, that's how strong the thoughts can be, even, when you're in recovery.
And when you're in the grip of the addiction, what you know to be right and who you'd say you want to be, that just gets quieter and quieter and further away, and you just get overpowered by this monster that's controlling you.
Yeah, you do. Probably I wasn't 100% right. Like I was aware of my morals, but as I said, biggest priority was let's take more.
Got to feed the beast.
Feed the beast. First thing in the morning, that was my first thought. As soon as my eyes open. But
how'd you get to that point from first taking it, and then how did it progress?
I guess because I had several surgeries over, a space of 5 or 6 years, which didn't help. Looking back, it really just gave me an excuse to ask for more. Like the pain was probably not that bad. But, the pain specialists rightly at the time put me on, a slow release one, and then you had quick for breakthrough pain, and it just builds. It's like these little sandcastles of how much you take, get building and building. From taking 2 slow releases a day, they increased it to 3, and then they increased the dose, and then increased the dose of the breakthrough.
Did you understand drug tolerance? And
I understood tolerance because they told me it's not working as well because your tolerance is building. So I understood that part of it. Found out the hard way what withdrawal is though, which was a result of me moving to Sydney and not being able to get any. I wasn't aware that it was such a. I didn't even know it was that controlled.
Yeah. So you were on it for months straight, and then
it was six
out.
months, I think. No, it was probably 8 months. Sorry, 8 months straight, and then moved to Sydney, and It was the first week of the Australian Open that year, I remember, and I can't really even explain withdrawal. You feel like you're dying. You feel like your bones want to rip out your skin. It's just the most awful feeling.
But you would have had no idea why that was happening.
I didn't know what was happening. That's when I went on the internet and went, oh, right, okay. That's the first time I realised this is, I'm basically addicted to this stuff.
What'd you do with that information?
At the time, nothing. I went through a 10-day, it would have been 2 weeks withdrawal. I just toughed it out. I still had pills there, but I actually threw them down the sink, which I remember later in addiction just thinking, why did I do that? Like, that was so
But you were freaked out. You didn't want to be an addict.
I didn't want to be an addict. Like, that wasn't.
No one wants to be an addict.
That wasn't where I wanted to head. And I think I had just watched one documentary at the time around it, and it was in the US where it's, rampant. But I just thought, that's not me. I don't want to be that. So I just toughed out the first withdrawal.
What are the symptoms of withdrawal that you had?
Nausea, diarrhea, restless legs are the worst. Anyone that's had restless legs, I didn't sleep. Probably didn't get any sleep for about 7 or 8 nights, just because of your restless legs.
Did you have a job?
I did.
Didn't go, I'm guessing.
I didn't go, no. I told them what was happening. I was just honest, which they were supportive about. Like, this is, I was working for Adidas at the time, and I got a promotion to go to Sydney, and I've always just worked on honesty. Like, you're better off, that's my true morals. Like, but obviously when addiction kicks in, honesty doesn't become so important. So, but at that point in time, that wasn't where I wanted to be.
So you detoxed 2 weeks, managed to actually get off it.
Yeah.
And then you got back on it.
Surgery, yeah. Had basically the original surgery, they'd missed a torn labrum or something, which kept catching. So like it was like your meniscus catching like real like.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had to go in and fix that, and again it was.
When they gave you the pills again, part of your mind must have gone, okay,
went back.
I know where this goes.
Yeah, but it was like, I've missed that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you forget how bad the withdrawal was. So,
yeah. But then you get to a period where you're just like, oh, geez, I don't want to go through that withdrawal again.
Yeah, that's right. So you've got to stay on it.
You got to stay on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's still something that a lot of people don't understand about drug addicts is that you're not getting high a lot of after a while.
No.
Certainly when you're properly in addiction. You're just trying to be well. You're just trying to feel normal. And
you're
trying to run from the come down or the withdrawal because it's so bad.
Yeah. 100% right. Whether it's, alcohol, prescription, any drug. Yeah. People, they forget about the come downs or, psychosis if you don't sleep, stuff like that. Like, but yeah, that week, even now thinking of that first week of when I went through withdrawal, it makes my skin crawl. Like, it was just horrific. Absolutely horrific. Didn't have to go through it again because when I eventually came off them, I went through a proper process with a doctor and, went on a maintenance program, which made withdrawal.
Not just cold turkey.
Yeah, rather than cold turkey, it was just like, manage it. And I did manage to get it.
Yeah.
And like today, I don't crave like a painkiller or anything like that. It's just, I've been quite lucky, I guess, from that sense. But, I've done a lot of work to, hasn't just happened like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
/Youngblood, check it out.
So at that time in your life, though, you were still yourself.
Yeah.
You met your ex-wife.
Yeah.
You ended up having a couple of kids.
Yeah.
So things were going well. You had a job.
I was still functioning. Still functioning. Like my career at Adidas sort of progressed, and I focused on that. That probably I became Nick, the Adidas man, rather than Nick who could play sport.
Yep.
And people just like that because the first thing is, can I get some cheap shoes or people I've never met? So, but I quite enjoyed that because it kind of gave me a bit of an identity, and it was what I wanted. It was a career in sport, but just naturally progressed through that. Just not through chasing a promotion. It just happened because I guess I was okay at it. Like as sales, you just got to be able to talk to people and provide a solution, and it's pretty easy when you got a brand like that behind you. Yeah.
And you were able to do that effectively, even though you were pretty much always on pills by that point?
Well, I mean, I look back, I never missed a number when I went there. Not over I was 11-year career, didn't miss a number. Was renowned for being sort of a higher performer, like they did team lineup stuff and all those things with corporate companies. The feedback was always positive.
Which must have reassured you that your drug use was actually fine because you were still holding everything together.
Yeah, I would go as far to say at that point in time, outside of maybe my family and my ex-wife knowing, no one would have known really. I was able to hide it pretty well. Yeah.
And did your partner know the extent of it?
Not when it got out of control, no. No, that's what caused so many issues, yeah. Yeah.
So how did it start to change you as a person from holding it together to not holding it together?
Yeah, so, where you kind of have that fine line of sticking to your morals and being your true self, that just sort of disappears. And your life just becomes about getting your next fix. And it just dominates your thinking. So therefore, you forget to do stuff. Fortunately, we didn't have kids at that point in time, like it was early sort of on. But down the track, you're just not there. You're not physically, you're there, but emotionally, elsewhere. And
was that because your prescriptions ran out?
No, that's because I was just taking too much. Yeah. So as it progressed over the years, that's when I started to, doctor shop and gather more prescriptions than I was meant to, which is, it's wrong. It's the wrong thing to do. But the alternative was I'd go into withdrawal, and that wasn't an option for me.
And so, the more you took, the more you needed to take, and it ends up becoming unmaintainable.
Yeah, correct. I don't even like talking about how much I was taking towards the end, because had I have mixed that with any sort of maybe an alcohol or when I did mix it at times with benzos, and the outcome was scary.
Like psychotic wise?
No, just driving a car and with other people in there and just falling asleep. But me, as an addict, you get really defensive. No, I'm not taking it, or I've not taken that much. You just lie. You lie upon lie upon lie.
You lie to yourself too.
You lie to yourself, and that's the most important thing. If you can't be honest with yourself, you're not going to be honest with anyone else. And sadly, that, I had what was a happy relationship, and, had what I wanted we'd built a house, had 2 beautiful girls. That's all I wanted growing up. And I lost it all because of the addiction. It still that's the most upsetting thing about it, even now. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, now that you've come out of it and you reflect on it and what you had there, and then see that you were so in the grip of this thing that you can't feel that at the time, or you can't appreciate it like you should, and even if you could, you're at the mercy of something that you just can't control.
Yeah, it's a really hard one. I don't have any resentment towards my ex at all. As we were talking about earlier, she was trying to help someone who was not able to be helped. The only time I was able to finally get on top of things when I let everything out. That was the only time.
To her?
No, to the therapist first of all, and then actually telling my wife at the time about what had happened when I was younger. That was hard.
Because you realised that was very much connected to...
Yeah, and even I could see in her, she had felt this guilt, she judged me too hard, which again, I felt guilt.
It's just back and forth.
It's back and forth.
Just a lot of pain there and stuff that's...
Yeah, there is, yeah. And, the person she married wasn't there. I'd disappeared. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's what's happened, but,
So you could understand where she was coming from and the fact that she couldn't have you around when you were in that spot, and then felt bad because she felt bad and felt bad because of what you've become. But then over all of that, you're just an addict and you just need a fix.
Pretty much. Yeah.
What attempts were made to help you?
From their end or from myself? Or
from your partner and your parents? Once they realised like how bad it was?
Once it all came out, how bad it really was, like, because I leaked little bits at times. So addicts quite often refer to like what they call a rock bottom. And I thought I had my first one when I first told everyone. But that was only the start of it, really. Yeah, it spiraled really quickly. I think it was 2017, which is when, she was pregnant with my second, and then we had our first kid, and that's when I got really out of control over a 12-month period. And
like doubling your use?
Yeah.
More.
Yeah. Just taking stupid amounts of it.
Were you conscious of why you were choosing to do that much more? Like what was driving that?
I was chasing that first euphoric feeling.
Yep.
Which
you never get. Chasing the dragon,
chasing the dragon, yeah. So it just became really, because I'd increased that much, if I didn't take it close to that much, I'd start to go to withdrawal.
Like when you go to the next level, then you can't really go back until
Not
you
quickly,
get clean.
You're meant to obviously taper off this stuff, and that wasn't. I mean, and you make it impossible for doctors to do their job with that, the ones that do know about it, if you're not being honest around what's happened.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I finally found, I guess most regular GP. I had about 30 of them. But, the one I guess knew my history and stuff, and I told him about it, and he was the one that actually pointed me in the right direction for help, because, my family had tried to help, my wife had tried to help, but it's really hard to find help for addicts.
Addicts who aren't ready to be helped as well.
Yeah, there was definitely an element of that. Like I wanted, in my mind, I knew I didn't want to be that person, but again, it's just such a strong pull. So it's I definitely had snippets there where I was like, I'm going to do this, and then.
Same old story.
Same day, might be 6 hours later, the feeling comes back.
Yeah.
So, that's why the hardest decision was to go to rehab. That was the last straw sort of thing. And that was based on, actually, my elder brother just said, we've got to do something or we're going to lose him.
So did you have a rock bottom moment specifically?
Yeah, I think I remember flying back at my cousin's wedding in Darwin. I just remember being up there the whole weekend chasing 5 or 6 doctor's appointments trying to get medications, and just, was not present the whole weekend. And, should have been an awesome family event, but I took advantage of the fact that my wife didn't come the wedding, so I had this element of freedom, and
the doctors didn't know you up there.
Doctors didn't know me. No, I was able to spin to a couple and got a result. Then went back and said that the car got broken into. Like, just lies to get more, because they'd give me a box and I'd take that in a day. It's just out of control.
And when you did go to rehab, did that work the first time?
Rehab worked because it got me clean. Because I couldn't get clean myself. Because of residential rehab, you can't leave, no mobile phones. I didn't see the kids for 6 weeks, didn't see anyone for 6 weeks. That's the rules. And they do that for the right reasons. I've had a couple of relapses since rehab. The biggest one being about 3 weeks long. The others just been one-offs. So I would say rehab worked for me. But it's not just rehab. It's the therapy that I've continued there. It's Narcotics Anonymous and the support you get there, which NA, again, it's...
You've got to have that comprehensive range of resources.
You have to. And NA is free. You can just continue to go No one ever judges you. It's honestly, it's the best thing an addict could wish for in terms of long-term support. That's my view. Like, just, because it is very hard to talk to other people that don't understand what you've been through. And, people that are at NA, they're there for a reason. They're there to get well. So I think, there's a lot of stigma attached to particularly drug addiction, which I'm fairly passionate about. Like, I can get quite pissed off, I guess, when I hear people talk about addicts in a certain way, because as I've learned, probably not 95, 98% of them, they've all had pretty rough lives.
Yeah.
A lot of bad shit happen.
And it's an illness that you can understand.
It is an illness, yeah. And that's the hardest
Doesn't
thing
mean
for
you're a
people to
bad
get.
person.
No.
Yeah. But you become
a bad person.
for all intensive purposes, you certainly look like one.
Collateral, crime, all that stuff. I understand why.
Comes with it.
It just, when people get well, that's when I guess people see the difference in like how I was during that. And I look back to, I've got videos of myself then, and it's scary. Yeah, it really is scary. I watch it just thinking, what, like, I don't remember that at all. That's not me.
Yeah. And you had bloody cancer as well.
Yeah.
To make matters worse.
That didn't help. On top of all the hip stuff, 2017, when my use was bad, I had 2 seizures, which I was convinced was due to the use of, but I told the doctors how much. I said that they're not, opioids aren't related to seizures. Like, that's what they told me. And the scans confirmed I had lesions on my brain from something. And so I got diagnosed with epilepsy, first of all. I had 2 grand mal seizures, and second one was in front of my daughter, which, that
traumatic
has definitely affected her. Like, she was only 3 or 4 at the time, but she remembers it. And the thing with the seizure is you know it's coming. Like, after the first one, the second one, I was like, I knew it was coming. Like, I said to my wife, I'm going to have a seizure. Like, and then, bang, straight away. And then, quite, what you see on TV or docos, like, the grand mal ones are the full body convulsing and, not pleasant. But fortunately, I was, they just medicate that, and that keeps it under control. But then, is it 2018? I was at work, got a really sharp pain in where my appendix is. Straight away, I was like, it's appendicitis. Like, you just, it was bad enough pain that you're like, that's not a pain, stomach ache or anything. Managed to get from Harbour Town to Flinders in sort of maybe 2 hours. Operated within 3 hours, and in that space of time, it nearly burst. Like 3 hours, it nearly burst. Which they didn't say anything at the time, but a week later, I went back. I said, look, something's not right. I just don't feel right. And then they actually had biopsy results. I'm not sure whether they got them just when I was there, or they were waiting for me to come back or something. But
that's when they found the cancer.
They said, when you're in an emergency, usually you have to wait for hours. Like, within 10 minutes, I had 3 doctors in there, and
something's up.
I just went, what? Like, something's up. And I was there by myself too. I took myself up there because, wife was home with a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old. So I said, look, I'll just go sort this out, because I could feel something was wrong. And I mean, I was right. But I just wasn't expecting it. You just had appendicitis. I had it taken out. I thought maybe there's,
infection or something.
Yeah, something like that. And unfortunately, it wasn't. But in saying that, it saved my life. Yeah.
How did you deal with all that at once?
So at that time, I was on a maintenance program, so I didn't turn to painkillers. Like, that wasn't an option.
That was good.
Yeah, that was a win, actually. How did I deal with it? Honestly, I don't know. It's kind of a bit of a blur. Like, it's survival mode, I guess. Like, first of all, they didn't know how bad it was. That was, so when I went up there a week later, it was 2.5 to 3 weeks before they could tell me how bad it actually was. That was the worst part, because I didn't know if it was a little tumour or if it was terminal or what was going on. And it was due to the type of cancer it was, and it had spread enough that it had gone in my bowel. They knew that much. And strangely enough, the testing for it only gets done in Tasmania, like of all places. So it takes longer.
Took ages.
Yeah.
But it was just stage 2. Or stage 2.
Yeah, that was it was just stage 2. Luckily, yeah. Had I not got the appendicitis, it could have sat there because the type of tumour it was doesn't normally present symptoms until it's too late, which I was told after all the treatment. I didn't get told that straight up, obviously, because you shoot yourself. But
yeah. So it wasn't too late. Then you had to go through chemo. You know,
I had surgery first. They took the whole tumour out, and removed a portion of my bowel, which that came with. There's complications that can come with that. You can end up with a bag. It's like a 30% chance, which, again, as a young guy, you don't really want to go through that. But yeah, managed to go through chemo. I guess what keeps you going through that is seeing some of the people, like when you sit there having actual chemo, like people that have been doing it for 5 years straight, like that's what gives you a bit of strength, I guess.
And was there wanting to be there for your daughters?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, just wanting, yeah. Like I wanted to stay, wanted life to stay as normal as it could, even though I was going through something that was horrific.
And you're still working then too?
Yeah, as much as I could. Yeah.
You carried a lot on your shoulders, man.
Yeah. Like I guess there was even some medications that involved with the chemo that a little bit habit forming. So there was another small issue there, but not as bad as, the opioid stuff. But that, again, that's just my brain looking for that quick fix to not have to deal with all this stuff at once.
And obviously you separated from your wife and all this happened and you had to keep yourself going while you sort of put yourself back together over a pretty long period of time to a point where now, you seem like you're pretty down to earth and...
Yeah, no, I am. Like I had another small scare only in September last year, which was based off the back of a one-day relapse. It wasn't an overdose as such, but I've since found out chemo damages your organs, and my liver and kidneys just, for whatever reason, they just started shutting down.
Jeez.
So I rang mum and dad, and I said, better come down. Like I'm not well. Like I just all I wanted to do was sleep. But my body was just shutting down. And it got to the point where they were keeping an eye on me. I was struggling to breathe, and then they rang the ambo.
That got very serious quickly.
It did, yeah. Another 12 hours unattended. The doctor flat out said that it would have been too late. So it was a massive scare, that one. But I wasn't, I guess for all my family, they thought I was full back into addiction, which that's a hard thing. Like it wasn't that. It was just 1 weak moment.
But every time you're trying to rebuild the trust and,
Yeah, you can do 150 good things.
And then even
do one bad and then bang, which I get. Like I'd
so much damage being done. But it doesn't mean it's unredeemable, No. And someone who's done bad things, who's ashamed of where you've been at certain points, doesn't mean you're not a good person. You can't be a good person again. Right. You can't be a good dad, and you get those runs back on the board and you bring yourself back.
100%. And that's, like I've got a poem, I've got my mirror. And through addiction, I've found it really hard to even look at myself in the mirror, which is a really interesting metaphor, I guess, around that, being honest with yourself. And I've since had this poem. It's called The Man in the Mirror, and it's really about, can you look at yourself in the mirror first thing in the morning, at the end of the day, and just say, look, have you been honest throughout the day? And if I pick up any moments where I haven't been, that's when things can get bad for me. So just having that brutal honesty with myself and with my support I've got through NA, that's what's keeping me clean. It is a daily, I don't like calling it a battle, but it's a disease, as we discussed earlier, but I'm at the right end of it. I've seen the worst of it. I don't want to go back. I know that. I really don't want to go back. And, I'm getting to a point now where I'm I'm well enough that I can help others as well. I've always been one of those people that I like to help others, but that's so I don't have to deal with what I'm dealing with.
Deflecting.
It's massive deflecting. But it's the first time in a long time I feel I'm in a space I can actually do that. I've still got to be very careful with it, but yeah, that's sort of I guess a positive that can. And I've spoken to people about this. Like I'm pretty open about the whole experience.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't been easy. It's I remember walking to rehab and just that moment, just thinking, my life's just changed like dramatically. And it was for the better, but at the time I was just so full of shame and guilt and
Chickens come home to
regret. Yeah. So all those emotions, you go into an environment which is just foreign, and then the therapist said just get it out of you, which is, I can look back now and laugh, but there was some stuff that goes on in group therapy. I think I nearly threw a chair through the window one day.
Yeah.
But it was just dealing with all these emotions.
You're angry at yourself, and everything that happened to you.
Yeah, angry at stuff that had happened and just letting that out. Yeah.
But now you can look in the mirror.
I can, yeah. And, I wake up most days pretty happy. Wake up. I'm not really a morning person, which doesn't help, but, I believe more, my ex is, she's got a lot more trust in me with the kids. She still has, moments where it is hard. Like if I look a bit tired or something, she might suspect, but, I guess I've given up trying to convince her or other people that I'm clean.
Yeah.
Because
actions speak louder than words.
They do, yeah. And, I'm back working and have been for a while. But, yeah, I guess it's only like sitting here talking about it now, and one real positive thing is my resilience that I've built over the years through everything I've been through. I see that as a positive thing.
No, you're a tough bastard to still be here after all that.
Yeah, I find it hard to take compliments still, but
There's plenty who wouldn't be after half of that.
Yeah, and that's what I have to accept that, It's been a bit of a journey, and most people don't go through half of that in their lifetime.
What do you want people to take away from your story?
I mean, just around the whole addiction piece, the biggest thing is just asking for help. And there's people that will be right in the midst of active and they don't want to hear it. But just knowing there is help out there. And it doesn't have to be rehab. There's NA, there's therapy, there's a lot of different options you can go to. But there is help out there. So just all you have to do is just reach out, get on the internet, do something. The important thing, as I mentioned before, a lot of it you don't have to pay for, which, that's pretty important for some people that aren't working or inactive, etc. But, yeah, I guess the other thing is just no matter what you go through, if you get through it and survive, nothing's irreparable, I guess. My biggest focus has just been, a good dad. I want my girls to be proud of me, and I don't want them just to think of me as, the sick dad sort of thing. And I can see in their behaviour around me when I'm well, because it rubs off on little kids. Yeah, it's been a bit of an adventure so far, fair to say, but...
Yeah. Well, you're a lot more than just the sick dad, mate.
Yeah,
you should be proud of yourself.
Mate. I can actually take those compliments now. It's taken a lot of work to get there. But no, I do appreciate it, and I just want to be able to help wherever I can with this sort of stuff going forward. It's because it can be a very lonely place. But that's like any mental health, I guess.
That's why we talk about it.
That's the best thing to do, mate, and good on you for what you're doing. I'm glad I've made the time to come and have a chat, and I've been wanting to do it for a long time, so appreciate you giving me the space and providing space for others too, mate. It's good.
Thanks, Nick.
Good, mate. Cheers.
That's it for this episode. If you like what we're doing, please jump on board with our mental health movement by following Youngblood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Youngblood Mental Health on TikTok. If you're already following, we'd love you to get more involved. Look out for our new weekly question time videos we've just started doing, and leave a comment to make yourself part of the conversation. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video, and they're all up on our Young Blood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel, so bless us with a subscription. And most importantly, please share the show with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.